We continue now at the top of Daf Yomi Gemara, Meseches Sukkah. This is Sukkah Daf 6a. This daf is sponsored Le'iloi Nishmas Shmuel Menachem Ben Aryeh Leib and Leah Bas Avram. Thank you for your sponsorship. If you would like to sponsor an Amud or Daf, please see the description box below. The Gemara now is continuing to cite the Mishnah in the Goyim. The Mishnah here continues. Hayalavush Kelev. Let's say the person who enters the house that has saras, he's not carrying the clothing, but he's wearing his clothing. The sandal baraglav, and he's wearing his sandals on his feet. He's not carrying them. V'tabosa betzbosav, and he has his rings on his finger. He's not carrying them. So in such a situation, hu tamei miyad? He's going to be tamei immediately, as Rashi over here says. The person who enters the house is tamei. However, vehein tahorim, but they are pure. Ad sheyishe b'chdei achilas pras paschitin v'lo pasaorin meisev v'ochel belifton. They are tar until he stays in the house the amount of time it takes to eat a half a loaf of bread. And what kind of bread are we talking about? We're talking about paschit, and we're talking about bread that is made from wheat and not bread that is made from barley. And we're also talking about where he's eating it with lifton, he's eating it with a dip, which speeds up the eating process. The point over here is we said that every single food in the pasuk, eretz chito, saora, v'gefen, oteino, v'rimon, etc., it's all a reference to shiurim. And here we're talking about the shear. What is the shear? The amount of time you have to stay in the Beis HaMenuga, in the house with leprosy, in order for the clothing to become tamei. It's the amount of time it takes to eat paschitin, so that's the shear of chitin. And the Gemara continues, Se'ora, when it comes to barley, what is that a reference to? What shear? The Gemara says, Detnan, as we learned in the Mishnah, Etzem Kesora, let's say you have the bone of a human being which conveys tumah, and it is the size of a barley, Metami b'mago v'masa, so it causes tumah when you touch it, when you carry it, Ve'eno metami bo'el, but there's no tumah soel. For example, if it's in a house, it's not going to be metame everything in the house. And geffen, when it says in the pasuk geffen, what kind of shear is that a reference to? Kedei revius yayin lenazir. That's a reference to the fact that if a nazir drinks a revius of yayin, so then that's going to be the amount that he's chayiv malchus for. Te'ena, and what's the shear of a fig? Kegrogris lotzah Shabbos. There's a halacha for carrying the shear is the shear of a dried fig. That's the amount you're chayiv on for carrying on Shabbos. Rimon, and what's a pomegranate a reference to? The Tanan, as we learned in the Mishnah, called klei bali batim shiuron kerimonim. Let's say you have vessels that belong to bali batim, so the halach is if they get a hole in them, they can become pure. Let's say they were impure, the hole will render it not considered a kli, and it's going to become pure. And so the halach is when it's the vessels that belong to bali batim, to regular individuals, so if they have a hole the size of a rimon, the size of a pomegranate, then they're going to be considered to be pure. Eretz zeis shemen udvash, and then the pasuk continues that it's the land that has the olive oil and honey. So the zeis shemen, the olives, eretz shekol shiureh kazeisim, all the shiurim of the Torah are a kazayis. Gemara says kol shiureh. Do you think all the shiurim of the Torah are kazayis? Sal kadaitach, is that possible? Ha'iko hani damrina. What about all the ones we just said before? Chita, saora, geffen, those are not kazayis. So elaima, rather what it means to say is sharov shiureh kazeisim. Most shiurim, when it comes to halachas, have to do with the shear of a kazayis. And finally, dvash, it says in the pasuk honey, kikoseves hagas of Yom Kippurim. That's a reference to the date. The large date is the amount that you eat on Yom Kippur that you're chayav for. And the Gemara continues, Almi, you see from all of this, do raisa ninu, that shiurim are do raisa. And we just said before that it's really halacha l'Moshe Sinai. This is a contradiction. Here we see all the various shiurim learned from the pasuk, and we said before it's halacha l'Moshe Sinai. So which is it? So the Gemara says, V'tizbra, 1 second. Is this question logical? Shiurin miksivi, in the pasuk, does it say here anything about shiurin? The pasuk is simply praising Eretz Yisrael with the various foods that Eretz Yisrael has. Ela hilchasaninu, rather it must be really, it is halacha l'Moshe Sinai. Ukra asmachta bi'almu, and the pasuk is simply an asmachta, it's simply a hint that you can rely upon as a source, but it's not the real source. It's just a hint to what is actually a halacha l'Moshe Sinai. And the Gemara continues, Chatzitzin do'raisa, and one of the other things you said on the previous Amud that was do'raisa was Chatzitzin, the fact that if you have a separation when you go into the mikvah, something that's separating your skin from the water, so then we say that that's not a good immersion in the mitzvah, in the mikvah. But that's not a halach l'Moshe Sinai either. That's do'raisa, that's from the Torah. Tichsiv, like the pasuk says, v'rochatz b'mayim. It says he has to bathe in the water. Shelo yeh davar chotzitz beino levein hamayim. There should be no chatzitza between him and the water. So the Gemara says, Ki asoi hilchas l'saro. The halach l'Moshe Sinai is not for the body, but for his hair. Ki the Rabba bar bar Chana, like Rabba bar bar Chana said, the Yama Rabba bar bar Chana, because Rabba bar Chana said, Neimo achas keshura. Let's say one of his hairs is tied in a knot. Chotzetzes, that's considered a chatzitza. The water is considered that it didn't touch his entire hair, and it's not going to be considered a good immersion in the mikvah. Shalosh einin chotzitzos. Now, if you have 3 hairs that are tied up, so there already the knot is not so tight, so it's not going to be a chatzitza. Rashi over here says, Neima achas keshura umakbid olav chotzetzes, meaning if it's tied and he's makbid on that kind of a thing, then it's going to be chotzetzes, a chatzitza, the mahadik shapir, because it's very tight. Velo aili b'mai, the water's not going to get in. We're going to say later on that even if it's a minority, there's a decree if it's something that he's makbid on, something that he would care about. Shalosh einan chotzos, but 3 is not a problem. Lefi shasar kosher v'lo mahadik shapir, because hair is hard, it's not so tight. V'ayli b'mai, the water's going to get in, so it's not a problem if it's shalosh. So that's what it says over here. 1 hair is going to be a problem. 3 is not a problem. Shtayim eini yodeya. When it comes to 2, I don't know whether that's a problem or not. So in any case, the point of the Gemara is, this halacha about chatzitza by hair, that's halacha l'Moshe miSinai. Gemara says, Saro nami doraisa. What are you talking about? Hair also? It's a din doraisa. Ninhu. They're also a din doraisa. Like the pasuk says, V'rachatz es besoro b'mayim. It says he immerses his whole body in the water. As hatafel l'besoro, we learn out es besoro means even that which is attached to the body, meaning even the hair. Umayni, what is that reference to? Saro. It's a reference to his hair. So that's also learned from the pasuk. So the Gemara says, no, the halacha l'Moshe miSinai, that's needed for the halacha that was taught by Rabbi Yitzchak. Diyama Rabbi Yitzchak, because Rabbi Yitzchak says, and we'll continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Vav Amud Beis.